Subprimeval, Season 3, Episode 1, Homestead, Part 1, written by Robert S.C. Cutler, read by Fentriss O. Moore. Hiding beneath a pile of fallen coats in the dark hall closet, the scent of her mother's jasmine perfume was Hannah's only comfort. On the other side of the door, sharp claws clicked against the hardwood floor as something anxiously paced back and forth. Every so often, the something would pause and sniff the space between the door and the floor, causing Hannah to freeze and hold her breath. At first, she thought it was her big brother trying to scare her, but then she heard him outside calling her name. Their parents had made the house off limits after the earthquake. The foundation had severely shifted, causing the house to lean. Hannah knew Logan would be too afraid to follow her inside, so there was no way she couldn't win the game. Unfortunately for her, the something outside the closet door didn't know the rules. For a few brief moments, the pacing stopped, and then, as if it were leaving, the clicking traveled away from the closet and into the kitchen, where the linoleum floor deadened the sound. With her heart pounding, Hannah listened to every noise the something made, mapping out in her head its position in the kitchen and then the family room. Driven by the urgency to escape, she crawled out from underneath the coats and placed a hand on the doorknob, turning it ever so slightly. Like a dog running for a snack, the something charged at the first sound of a creaky door hinge. Hannah slammed the door and screamed. She burrowed back beneath the coats just as it reached the closet. With ferocious intent, the something began clawing away at the old, stained oak, filling the small, dark space with a deafening rumble. In her country kitchen, Joyce Caldwell made sandwiches and packed a large cooler while watching Channel 11 News on a small box TV. "Did you hear that?" she asked her husband, Buddy. "They just reported that 13 counties surrounding Wichita, including northern Oklahoma, are without power, and that it's not safe to drink the water." She paused a moment as the station showed aerial footage of the widespread damage. "We've got to get up there and help my sister's family," she urged. "Janice and Larry got well water and they're not even on the grid. I don't know what the big deal is," Buddy yelled from the living room. Joyce walked out of the kitchen, drying her hands on an old dish towel. "You're not even watching the news. Don't you have the slightest interest in what's going on up there?" "The news is too damn depressing. Besides, you were parroting everything they said from the kitchen, so I turned it off." Walking around her husband's recliner, she had to step over 2 weeks' worth of newspapers that were all turned to the sports section. Buddy was staring at the television, where a couple of men were rocking back and forth in a boat while struggling to net a largemouth bass. "What did you turn it to that channel for?" asked Joyce. "You don't even fish." "I don't play football neither, but I still like to watch it." "Well, regardless of how self-sufficient you think Janice and Larry are, my brother's on his way over to drive us up there this afternoon." Buddy broke his gaze from the TV and sat up in his chair, scowling at Joyce. "I'm not missing my bowling night just so we can drive to Kansas and help somebody that doesn't need our help." "How do you know they don't? They could be fighting for their lives this very moment." Buddy fixed his comb over and sat back down in the chair. "Now you're just getting yourself worked up for nothing." "I am not getting worked up. My sister could be in real trouble." "Did your sister call you and say they were in trouble?" Buddy asked in a sarcastic tone. "No, did you call her?" Joyce clenched her fist around the dish towel and glared down at her smug husband. "I couldn't call them because all the circuits are busy due to the earthquake. And if you don't want to get any further on my bad side, then you'll get your lazy butt up and out of that recliner and get ready to leave." "Waste of my time," Buddy grumbled as he kicked the footrest back and got up from his chair. "I hope you know you're paying my league fees tonight." Joyce laughed to herself. "Don't I always?" "Hannah," Janice Carroll called out toward the barn, "you better show your backside right now if you know what's good for you." Larry Carroll walked out of the utility building where he had been changing the water pump on his pickup. Squinting in the bright midday sun, he wiped the grease off his hands on the pant legs of his coveralls and the sweat from his brow onto the sleeves. Looking north across the flat, barren landscape, he took in the billowing plumes of smoke that enveloped Wichita and thanked God the volatile Kansas wind was blowing from the south. "You lose track of the kid?" asked Larry. "Just Hannah. Logan is looking for her in the barn." "I thought I told them both to stay out there. That barn is nearly 100 years old and could easily come down if we have another big quake." "No, you told them to stay out of the house, not the barn," Janice corrected. "I clearly heard you telling Logan to muck out the stalls after he put the horses in the corral." Larry rubbed the back of his weathered neck. "Well, maybe I was just thinking it." Logan appeared from the shadows of the barn with both arms raised up. "It's like she just disappeared." "People just don't disappear," Janice said, "especially 9-year-old little girls. Did you check the trailer, Logan?" "Which one, the horse or fifth wheeler?" "Both." "Well, she's not in the horse trailer because I was just in there," Logan said. "I'll see if she's in the camper." Janice crossed her arms and shook her head. "Don't get into the food that I packed. We only have enough for 3 days, and I don't want to impose on your Aunt Joyce." "But I'm hungry," Logan pouted. "Do what your mother says, Logan," Larry said. "We'll have a bite to eat before we hit the road." The loud voices outside gave reason for the something to stop clawing at the closet door. As it scampered away, Hannah could breathe again. Crawling out from under the coats, she noticed sunlight coming through a thin, gouged-out section of the door. Lowering her head to see if she could see out, the light reflected off of her blue eyes and wavy red hair. Squinting, she moved back and forth until the line of vision that led directly to the living room window came into focus. At first, she was confused by what she saw. There weren't any dogs near the farm. Theirs had died a month earlier, and the nearest neighbor was over a mile away. All her family had was a bunch of feral cats that mostly lived in the barn. And still there it was, roughly the size of their old border collie, but without any hair. Thinking she had been scared for nothing, Hannah slowly opened the door and whistled. The hairless dog jerked its body around and growled. Only it wasn't a dog. It was something else entirely. Something Hannah couldn't wrap her 9-year-old mind around. The longer she stared, the more its face came into focus. Small black eyes, a pushed-up nose, and a mouth full of needle-sharp teeth. As the strange-looking animal made its way toward her, it emitted a high-pitched coo, making Hannah giggle. "You're kind of ugly and cute all at the same time," Hannah said as she got down on her knees and patted her legs in an attempt to coax the animal over to her. In response, it reared its head and chirped several times and then cooed again. Midway between the closet and the front living room door, the animal growled low in its throat and bared its teeth. Alarmed by the behavior, Hannah started scooting back toward the hall closet. Just as she crossed the threshold, the animal charged. Hannah slammed the closet door and screamed her head off. "Did you hear that, Larry?" asked Janice. Larry was headed back to the utility building with the truck's water pump on his mind and didn't hear his wife's question or his daughter screaming. After a few more attempts, Janice's voice finally cut through his subconscious. "Did you say something?" asked Larry. "Where is that coming from?" "Where's what coming from where?" Larry said. "Is that Hannah?" asked Janice. "I think she's in the house, Mom," said Logan. Larry set his jaw and took off running towards the house. "If she is, she's going to get a whooping." "A whooping? What's that?" Logan laughed. "Don't laugh at your dad. He grew up in a different time," Janice said. "We both did. I just hope your sister's not really hurt." Janice took off after her husband when Hannah's screams grew louder and more frantic. Faster but not quite as tall, Logan passed his mother and reached the front door at the same time as his father. Larry called out Hannah's name and received a cry for Daddy in return. Larry threw open the front door and then slammed it back shut when he saw what was standing next to the hall closet door. "What the hell was that? What's wrong, Dad? Why aren't you going in?" asked Logan. Larry took a breath and blew it out slowly. Just as Janice made it to the front porch, Larry slowly opened the door and peeked in. "What are you doing, Larry?" asked Janice. "Shh." Larry waved his hand. "There's something in there." "What do you mean, something?" asked Janice. "Where's Hannah?" Hannah screamed again, making both Larry and the strange animal in the house jump. Larry slammed the front door again and tried to catch his breath. "Get my shotgun out of the fifth wheeler." "What do you need a gun for?" asked Janice. "Is Hannah okay?" Larry pointed silently at the door, urging Janice to look for herself. With big blue eyes, she nervously looked at Larry and then at the door. All she had to do was open it a crack to see what her husband was talking about. Cocking its head and blinking its eyes, the strange animal had cuteness to it, even though it was freaky looking. Janice quickly shut the door and told Larry to get his shotgun. "Okay, but don't open that door again," he said as he took off running across the circular drive. "What about Hannah? She's stuck in the house with that thing," Janice said. Logan half laughed. "That's her fault for not listening." Hannah screamed and then cried for her mother. Determined to get her daughter out of the house and not wanting to wait for Larry, Janice opened the front door and attempted to shoo the strange animal away. At first, it just sat there looking at both Janice and Logan, trying to figure out what they were. Keeping a steady eye on the animal, Janice called for Hannah. "I'm in the closet," Hannah cried. "I hear you, Pumpkin. Just stay where you are while me and your brother scare this animal away." "Is that a dog?" asked Logan. "Weird." "It's mean, whatever it is," Hannah yelled from the closet. Janice took one too many steps toward the strange animal, inciting it to growl and bare its mouth full of sharp teeth. "Get back out of the house, Logan," she urged as she backpedaled. Logan didn't move fast enough and got stepped on by his mother, causing him to fall to the floor. Janice instinctively protected her son with her body as the strange animal charged and latched on to her forearm. As fast as it had bitten down, it let go of Janice and retreated, leaving behind numerous lacerations. Janice screamed out in pain, causing Hannah to start screaming again in the closet. Reacting to the stressful noise, the strange animal reared up on its hind legs and screeched so loud that it shocked mother and daughter into silence. Coming back down on all fours, it opened its tooth-lined mouth, dripping with Janice's blood, and hissed. Afraid the thing was going to attack again, Logan cried for his father. Hearing utter terror in his usually cool and collected 12-year-old son's voice, Larry picked up his pace. As he ran onto the porch, he loaded 2 buckshot-filled cartridges into his shotgun and yelled at his wife and son to clear out of the way. Jay sped north on the Kansas Turnpike in his Buick Roadmaster, with his sister Joyce sitting next to him and his brother-in-law Buddy snoring in the back seat. The north side lanes were void of any other vehicles but theirs, while the traffic going in the opposite direction was bumper to bumper with weary travelers trying to escape the ruins of Wichita. As they neared the exit for their sister's house, Joyce took a $5 bill out of her purse and handed it to Jay. "What's that for?" the large man asked. "The toll. It's roughly $2 at this exit." Jay handed back the money. "No charge today. Didn't you see the gates were all open? They must have shut them down after the earthquake. Now what you can hand me is a cold beer." A beer sounded good to Joyce, too. Unable to reach the cooler, she smacked Buddy on the leg, startling him awake. "Christ almighty," Buddy snorted. "Are we there?" "Jay needs a beer," Joyce said. "Could you grab one for me, too?" Buddy stretched and lifted the lid of the cooler. "Should have brought more. We're already a 6-pack down." "Fix your hair, Buddy," Joyce said, motioning with her hand. "You should really have the barber trim the top a little shorter. Looks like you're trying to hide the fact that you're going bald." Jay chuckled and took a gulp of his beer. "Maybe you should join the hair club for men." "Maybe you should both lose some weight," Buddy spat back. Joyce rolled her eyes and turned back around. Look who's talking. You're just jealous of my wavy locks. Jay laughed while running his fingers through his hair. Don't miss the exit, Prince Charming, Buddy said. I want to get this so-called rescue over with so we can get back down the road. Are you still grouching about missing bowling tonight? Asked Joyce. 'Cause if you are, you're going to be very disappointed. We drove up here to lend a hand to Janice and Larry, not to be beholden to your important schedule. Jay blew past the toll gate and down the county road that led to the Carroll farm. The sparsely populated area, with fields and pastures as far as the eye could see, appeared to be more deserted than usual. Fallen silos, collapsed barns, and broken-out windows on the little houses that dotted the roadside showed just how powerful the quake had been. Look at that, Jay pointed out the window. Haven't seen that before. The cows are all bunched up tight in the middle of the field, Joyce said. Looks like you're missing your meeting, Buddy taunted. Don't cross the line, Buddy. Not today, Joyce sternly responded. As Jay turned onto their sister's property, everybody in the car gasped at the severe angle the old farmhouse was leaning. Fearing the worst, Joyce urged Jay to speed up. As soon as he stopped the car, they both jumped out and started calling for Janice. A shotgun blast echoed against the house and barn, making Joyce jump and Jay duck. Janice cried out for Hannah from inside the house. Moments later, both she and Larry reappeared on the porch. Larry was carrying Hannah in his arms, unconscious and covered in blood.